Welcome back to the Winded Podcast. I'm your host, Seamus Sullivan. And if you are not already subscribed, make sure you're subscribing. We're available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and Amazon. And make sure to follow the Instagram at Winded Pod. And you can find me on TikTok at Seamus_Sullivan. But that's enough about me. Today on the show, we have Danny Ervin, an NIL agent with Red Envelope Sports. Very excited to get into the topic of NIL. It's a very polarizing topic. Some people think it's great. Some people think it's ruining college sports. So who better than somebody who's right in the thick of it to kind of guide us through and teach us the world of NIL. Danny, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on, Seamus.
Of course. No, it's a very interesting topic, like I said, and it's something that everybody knows NIL. They hear it when it's talked about with college sports, and it's really kind of lumped into the big college sports, but it goes runs deep. It's all the way through at all the different levels. And I think, NIL is just such a phrase that's thrown around. People probably don't even realize what it means. Why don't you tell me how you kind of got into the world and really what NIL means to college athletics?
Yeah, for sure. So it's been a little bit of an unconventional path to get to where I am today. But I was in college at University of Michigan at the time when NIL became legal. That was the summer going into my sophomore year, I believe. And I was good friends with a couple of guys on the football team, and I just remember the moment when this news came out and we're all just kind of sitting there, and my buddies were like, what do we do with this? Like, yeah, this is legal, but how do we really utilize this? um, so kind of started off by getting involved with one of the first agencies that was focused just for University of Michigan athletes, called Playbooked. And I was kind of running around campus trying to find brands in Ann Arbor that would be interested in working with University of Michigan athletes, and kind of finding some of the athletes who wanted to do these types of deals. So that was really the first step into it, and then from there landed an internship at an agency out in at the time they were in Los Angeles, working for a guy named Justin Giangrande, who had a lot of the first big 5-star high school quarterbacks and receivers and skill guys out in Los Angeles area. So learning a lot about the high school side of things, while also we had some collegiate football talent that we were focused on, the brand partnership side for them. So really just kind of Swiss Army knife internship there, seeing it from the agency side. From there, a good family friend of mine brought me in. He started the collective over at Michigan State a couple years ago, and he brought me and another individual in to kind of help him build it out. And obviously from the fundraising perspective, but also we wanted to build that brand into something that the student athletes at Michigan State took great pride in. So we wanted to have a merchandise component where the student athletes would have input and basically, kind of be the models and everything behind a pretty sweet streetwear brand that was kind of the Michigan State streetwear brand. So that was certainly an interesting experience, and that was back at the time where there were only collectives. There was no rev share. That was kind of the front office, and the Swiss Army knife for all things NIL at the school. So learned a lot about that. Went and worked for University of Michigan's football program from there, and football information. So got to see a little bit of the team side. Coach Harbaugh the championship season. Um, After graduation, went out to an agency in or the same agency I interned at. Worked there for about a year, managed a bunch of the talent, all around the country, football, and then had a basketball, had a track. It was a very diverse bunch of athletes that I worked with, and joined Red Envelope a little under a year ago, and that's how I got to where I am. So
That's great. And it's gotta be kind of cool to have had that experience of being in college, knowing athletes when that hit, and then to kind of fast forward to where we are now and see how far it's come. What would you say the biggest misconception of NIL is? Because, like I said, there's people that don't like it, and think it's probably more that they don't understand it than they don't like it.
Right, and my favorite thing is when I'm in a conversation with somebody and, usually it's people who are a little bit older, and, I tell them what I do, and they say, "Well, I hate, NIL, and I hate what's done for college sports, and whether you love it or you hate it, it's here," right? So you can gripe about it all you want, but, um, at some point, you're gonna have to accept it because it's not going away. And I would say the biggest misconception about NIL, and especially in our industry, agents, in general don't get the best kinda rap around the NIL industry, and I'm not saying everyone, in my industry is that they're angels, but at the same time, at our firm, we're really focused on creating great football outcomes for our clients, and that's the approach we've taken. That was the approach Don took, and it's been passed down to us. And with our guys, we ultimately just want to make sure they're in the best positions to position them for long term success. So, in terms of a misconception, I would say not all agents are running around chasing the highest dollar for their athletes. It's especially what we do here. We're focused on putting our guys in the best position for long term success. And an example I have there, an athlete that I've had the pleasure of working with for about the past year now, a kid named Tyson Davis, who was a wide receiver at Central Michigan. Played there for 4 years. While he was there, had 2 season-ending injuries. He had a torn Achilles and torn ACL. For a slot receiver, that's not great for long-term outlook. And Tyson decided he wanted to, jump in the portal after this past season as a grad transfer with 2 years due to medical red shirts available, and he was one that we really had to work for. He wasn't a portal guy where you jump in and there were 20 different schools that were hitting him up. Due to the injury history, a lot of schools were kind of scared off. And he was a guy that it literally basically got to that last day where you could jump into the portal and kind of that last wave of schools bringing in guys on visits. And I'm hitting up, every school trying to get them a spot, see who needs a slot receiver. And really, we had some schools that flirted with us, but nothing up until that point. And it literally just came down to I'm sitting there tracking transfer portal, movement with team depth charts where it's at. And I called University of Virginia and said, "Hey, it looks like you guys still need a slot who can, a veteran guy who can come in and play." And they said, "We do." And that was a situation where it was not the biggest financial transaction we've done. It wasn't the biggest name player, but we turned a kid's life around at the end of the day because he was ultimately going to have to go back to Central Michigan. That's an offense that runs the ball probably about 65% of the time. Not great for a receiver, and beg for his job back. And instead, he is getting a free graduate degree from one of the best schools in the world, making some money, and the football dream lives on. So I would just say, like, those are the moments that the media doesn't necessarily cover, and instead, they'll make sure to cover the moments where an agent, did something crazy, made some crazy financial ask to a school, or basically made a kid transfer for a selfish reason. So that's just something. I mean, there's a lot of that out there that doesn't get the love that it deserves, and just wanted to bring that up.
No, that's a great story, and I think when people think of, anybody who thinks that college sports have been ruined, the transfer portal is obviously a big part of that, and people don't like, guys just jumping ship and going around, but in a story like that where this is not the, guy who's gonna get drafted number 1 overall, it's not like a top prospect, and, with your assistance, you were able to land him in a place that's a good fit for him versus either being done with football or having to go back and go to a situation that he wasn't comfortable in anymore. Before NIL, those type of situations probably weren't happening, right? It was the player was really on their own to kinda handle those things, and who knows if he's able to find that spot in West Virginia without some assistance.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's completely changed, and it almost went from, I guess, right when NIL started, you were kind of, you were viewed in kind of a negative way for having an agent, like, "Oh, this guy's big time," right? But now it's almost shifted to the point where if you are a major college football player and you don't have an agent, that's malpractice on your part. because, and it's not just because of navigating the portal and all that, but these contracts that the schools are giving these guys now from revenue sharing. I mean, you need a team that's experienced to help redline and negotiate these because that's what we've come to, and you need professionals to help you out with that.
Obviously, depending on the sport, depending on the athlete, and depending on the brand itself, there's no kind of one answer for what separates, what athlete's a good option or a good, you know, opportunity for a brand to pursue. But what would you say is a characteristic that 99% of brands are looking for in an athlete to work with?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and the number one thing when athletes have asked me that I reiterate to them is authenticity, because I mean, at the end of the day, most athletes don't have the crazy following. Let's say, over 99% don't have some massive following that just naturally draws brands. So what can you do to differentiate yourself from the pack, right? And make yourself stand out to brands. So when I bring up the story of authenticity, I think of my younger sister. She plays soccer at University of Michigan, and I've kind of helped her out with some NIL stuff over the years. And she was one where she doesn't have a huge following. She plays a non-revenue sport, so you would think on paper there aren't a ton of NIL opportunities. Well, we worked and scrapped, and we got a couple of brands that would send her some free product, and that's kind of how it started. And from there, it's, hey, you get this. I helped you get this opportunity with free product. Now it's almost up to you to decide what relationship you want with this brand long term. So create a really solid Instagram video or a TikTok or whatever for this brand to show them, hey, I'm serious about wanting to work with you consistently. And she did that for a couple of the brands, and it got great engagement. It was really good content. And as a result, these brands came back, and now they're doing paid partnerships with her. And again, she still is only somebody that has about 2,000 followers, but brands will take quality over quantity with these posts. If you're going to be authentic with the way that you post, you incorporate brand products into your content, that matters more than just checking the box with a bunch of posts. So that's something that I tell all my athletes about.
Yeah, and it's great to see from my perspective as I'm kind of going through Instagram or I'm seeing people that could be potential guests and looking to see people that don't have, a following like Livy Dunn has, but you know, they have a couple thousand or whatever, but you can see that they are getting some sort of opportunities, whether it's representation or they're, promoting brands and either getting paid for it or at least getting something out of it. And I think that that's probably something that people don't realize that it's not just the D1 star quarterback, football athlete that is getting these opportunities. It's really anybody who goes out there and puts in the effort and, provides a service for the brand because not every brand is, Coca-Cola. There's smaller, upstart companies that are, clothing or merchandise or whatever that also need promotion. And instead of being able to reach out to, the top athletes, they kind of stay with somebody who they can get, and it kind of works out for everybody.
Yeah. No, absolutely. There's different ways to go about it, and every athlete's going to be different. But what I tell everyone as well is you also have to be patient with this because it doesn't happen overnight. I mean, even Livy Dunn, and you think of some of the big, NIL names over the past few years. I mean, it didn't happen overnight for them. It happened over time. So you have to be patient. But with that, you also have to be consistent and, putting that quality content out there, while also making sure that it's authentic. So it's kind of balancing all those things. And ultimately, that's kind of the formula, in my opinion.
Yeah, people get beaten to death with ads in everything in life, whether it's watching TV, watching YouTube, social media, and, if I'm gonna consume a promotional material, I at least want it to seem real and not this scripted fake thing. So I think, people that can, bring that authenticity and showcase whatever product they're showcasing in a way that people would wanna consume. anybody can do that. It doesn't have to be, and honestly, somebody who's a little hungrier and is grateful for the opportunity, honestly, might be even a better fit for that.
Yep. No, absolutely. I mean, there's not a cookie cutter type of solution for brands. I think they're kind of just looking for things on the fly, and athletes that fit their current campaigns. So 100%.
So, talking about social media, how much involvement does your agency have in, kind of coaching or letting people know kind of how they should, or is that really just up to the client to kind of run their social medias?
Yeah, it's a little bit case by case. I mean, we're not it's not a standard blueprint for everybody, but we've had some clients who come to us and say, I want to be more marketable, or I want to grow my following, or anything like that, or help me create some ideas for content. And I mean, we'll sit down with them and just figure out, like, all right, let's create a plan that works for you, because the plan that works for some of the big NIL names out there, that might not be what you want to do. You might not want to post 3 times a week and post 2 stories a day and all that. And if you're somebody that doesn't post a lot, let's focus on somewhere you're maybe posting once a week or once every 2 weeks, but let's make it something that's quality content. So, yeah, we have athletes that will kind of help them with that social media calendar, what to post, what days, helping them come up with ideas. But we're as involved as individuals want us to be, or not as involved as they want us to be. So it's a little bit case by case.
Yeah, what kind of mistakes are people making that, if they don't have representation kind of coaching them?
Well, the biggest mistake that I see, and I'm sure probably most agents out there would agree with me, is a lot of kids don't take the long-term financial outlook too seriously. So with all my guys, I'm like, all right, let's get you set up with financial advisor, accountant. I mean, the amount of guys that I've heard from in the past, I'm not saying that they're clients of our firm, but just in general, that don't know they have to pay taxes. It's frightening. Um, so making sure those things are taken care of, and ultimately just, hey, are you budgeting this money, or are you going to go blow it all in 2 seconds on clothes, chains, cars, whatever? That's a huge, that's number one, obviously. But also, I think one of the biggest things is a lot of athletes will get caught up at times in chasing, if they do jump in the portal or in the high school recruiting process, chasing that highest dollar amount as opposed to the best football fit. And that's where we really step in. And at the end of the day, it's their decision, right? If that's the way they want to do it, then that's how they're going to do it. But there have been situations where we've had a lot of athletes who will take significantly less money to play for a program that is better suited for them and will ultimately deliver a better long term outcome for them. So I would say that's an issue overall. But we spend a lot of time with our guys just making sure, like, hey, this is a decision you're making. We're going to give you all the information to help you make the most informed decision possible.
We were talking about it before we got on, and when you think of sports agents, big time sports agents, there's kind of a handful that are like just bigger than life kind of names in the industry. Obviously, there's like Boris and Rosenhaus but your founder, Red Envelope Sports, Don Yee, who's a huge deal in Boston, as he represented Brady, Edelman. What's it like, having Don Yee kind of? I know that you said he's kind of more consulting now, but what's it like being exposed to somebody who's so legendary in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, long story short, it's absolutely a tremendous honor to be working with his team, and working for the firm that he really built over the years. And we do take pride in really carrying on his legacy, doing business like he did, not just with Tom, but with all of his clients through the years. And he's taught a ton to my team, which in turn has been taught to me. So we're very particular about how we do business, and Don was successful because he did business in a certain way, and we make sure that we're implementing that into our work as well. So it's a tremendous honor. It's definitely a high bar, which is it comes with a little bit of stress there, but at the same time, it's a good legacy to try to follow up on.
Yeah, I mean, he's a perfect example of, at least with what he did with Brady and Edelman too, is was just the situation mattering more than the finding the highest dollar, and you can see it shines through to you where, if he could have easily put Brady on the open market and gone, a blank check for him, and but he wins 7 Super Bowls, without, being in the right situation. So I think that that legacy alone is showing through in the way you guys do business.
Yeah, for sure. We try our best. So
What is something about NIL that, maybe on the horizon or that you kind of are hoping for to kind of come from, obviously it's evolved to this point. What is something that, you kind of would hope, if there is anything,
yeah, I guess well right now there's obviously so much going on between the executive order that came out. There's always new rule changes and new legislation. I mean, it feels like every day, and we're constantly having to stay in touch with all that and stay on top of it. So, I mean, there's a number of different ways to go with it, right? As it goes with eligibility, is 5 and 5 going to become the new standard? Um, is there going to be a limit on transfers? I don't necessarily see that happening. I don't see a lot of this happening without a CBA in place. Just being honest. Um, but I guess it's just overall, I do think something that would be good for the industry is having, I guess, some sort of not necessarily or I guess certification's the right word. Some sort of guardrails around who's allowed to really work with a lot of these athletes, because it's not like the NFL right now. There's no NFLPA certification, so really, there's a much wider demographic that can be agents, and I mean, I see it all over, and there's a lot of people that are representing these student athletes that don't have their best interests in mind, and I just think that's something that we as an industry, we need to kind of weed that out, because that's what's hurting our student athletes. So I would say that's probably the top thing I would be focused on. I mean, there's a million other things I know are being discussed with, rev share, and how is that number going to increase every year? What's the collective's future look like? But again, it's going to continue to be chaos for a little while now.
Yeah, for sure. The the job of being a sports agent is, I would say, relatively niche, or it's not discussed kind of in the same way that other jobs in sports are. What would be your advice to somebody who wants to kind of get into that field?
Yeah, I would say on paper it looks awesome. I mean, you're talking to a lot of people out and about, and it's like, oh, Jerry Maguire, that's sweet.
Yeah.
I wanted to do growing up. It definitely is. I love it personally, but it's not for everybody, and you're not going to know if you love it until you see it up close. And if you're going to be successful in this industry, you gotta be willing to be really scrappy, and you're gonna have to be cutthroat, and you're gonna have to deal with a lot of chaos and endlessly. You're gonna work pretty much you're never gonna work a 9 to 5. You're gonna work weekends, you're gonna work late nights, you're gonna work around your client's schedule and ultimately when you're needed. I mean, I've taken calls at 5 AM, I've taken calls at 2 AM. I've taken calls at every hour in the day, and that's just the business we're in, and it's extreme nothing's more rewarding than college football Saturdays when I get to flip around the TV and, in one game, I see one of my guys making plays, and in the next game, I see another one of my guys making plays. But at the same time, there's a lot that goes into ultimately getting to that outcome and being able to watch those guys. Biggest thing I would recommend to people trying to get into it, there's so many different ways to get into it now. Whether it's if you're a college student, there's plenty of opportunities with athletic department, football staff individually, or any of the athletic staffs. There's opportunities with NIL groups on campus. So really, I would say it's just at some point, especially as you're getting into it, you're not going to make a lot of money. You're going to have to work terrible hours, and you're going to have to do a lot of grunt work. But that's kind of the rite of passage to get into this industry. You got to prove it, And once you get in the door somewhere, you got to be willing to learn, ask a lot of questions, show that you really care and you want to learn from those who have been there for a while, and you'll do just fine. Um, but yeah, I guess that's kind of the rundown.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting career path. How would you say you mentioned Jerry Maguire, how kind of accurate or inaccurate of a representation of what that's like as life as an agent?
I mean, it's somewhat, I guess, it's definitely Hollywood effect a little bit.
Yeah,
I guess at the core of it, there are some similarities.
that's great. That's a great movie. Great movie.
Definitely.
All right, Danny, this has been so much fun. I really appreciate you taking the time and kind of educating on the world of NIL. Where could people reach out to you if they have, additional questions or anything in regards to NIL?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm on Instagram, Danny Ervin 48. Same thing on Twitter X. Always happy to connect, and life's a network. So building relationships. That's what I say. I'm in the business of. That's what it's all about. So always happy to connect.
Love to hear it. Thank you so much, Danny.
Perfect. Thanks.